So good evening. So we're at number 12 in 21 for 21. I've got great pleasure to introduce one of my previous students, Loks Ksang, who graduated from University of Derby. I think it was last year, wasn't it? Yeah, so last year with a postgraduate diploma in specialist community public health nursing, and Loks had already got a master's in public health and had done lots of other study at level 7. So he's the perfect candidate to talk to you about writing at master's level. Loks is now actually, would you believe, a third-year medical student in the Ukraine. And is doing the fast-track medical degree. I'm immensely proud to welcome Loks. So Loks, over to you. I'm sure you can already see the screen, and Loks is going to tell me, and I will control that for you.
Thank you, Neil, for the wonderful introduction. My name is Loks, and welcome everybody. Good evening, everyone. This evening, I'm going to talk about writing at master's level, which is level 7. My objective is at the end of this session, each one of you will have some knowledge or some idea on how to write at level 7, or if you don't really intend to write at level 7, being able to write an article to publish in a magazine or a journal. So everything we're going to talk about is really simplified, and I've tried to use like bullet points and make the slides as simplified as possible. Neil, can you move to the next slide, please? So when we talk about academic writing at level 7 or postgraduate level, what do we really mean? Sometimes when we hear academic writing, our minds go blank and we don't really know what we're required to do. And we end up getting a lot of information and then not being able to sort them out and to give to the lecturer what they need. Instead, just put everything together. And then at the end of the day, the lecturer's feedback is that your work is too descriptive. So we're going to try to talk about this in a manner that you can be able to understand what do we mean by academic writing. So first and foremost, before you start your writing, what you need to understand is that, is your writing going to answer the question that the lecturer is set for you? And also, is your essay going to have a clear structure running through from the beginning to the end? And also, are you going to use evidence? When we say evidence, we mean like written articles, research, systematic reviews. Are you going to use such information to support your arguments? Because the more you use such information, the more your article or essay is more convincing to the reader. But if you don't use such evidence in your essay, it may end up looking so descriptive, or they might give you feedback like your work is not well referenced, or again, you may end up in the pitfall of committing plagiarism because you're producing stuff without any support of reference or evidence. And also, in academic writing, we want to demonstrate critical approach to the literature. So when you read an article, do you have a mind that's very skeptical? Because you don't have to agree with everything that you read in an article. You need to really ask yourself that, what's the mode of thinking of the writer or the researcher of this article? Because sometimes when articles are written, there's always likelihood of bias, and this bias can make the findings of the article not to be actual facts, but maybe represent the thinking of the author. So as a reader and as someone who is writing your article, you need to have this mind whereby you approach any article that you read with a critical mind by asking yourself, what if? What about the other side? What could have happened? So you have to make sure that your reading is very formal, objective. You pick out your notes, make sure they're very precise. And also when you write your essay, make sure that it's well written and use correct grammar, punctuation, and referencing. Next slide, please, Neil. So some of the common mistakes that students end up doing when writing at level 7 is that they may give their answer to the lecturer, and actually their answer does not answer the assignment question. And also their writing may be poorly structured. What do I mean by this? You could be having the points that are required for your essay, but the way you organize them may not be very structured, like there's no flow. So the person reading your essay may not really be able to follow through what you're talking about. And also, if your writing does not demonstrate a critical approach to the literature, once again, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier on. When you're referencing or when you're talking about work that's been written by other people, don't just put it there. Try to give your own opinion, try to criticize, try to highlight their strengths. And when you do this, then you score more points. Next slide, please, Neil. So, thank you. So how do you answer? A question? So when you get a question to answer, let's say for your essay or for your research, what you need to do is try to study the question well and take your time, don't rush, because by getting a good understanding of the question will help you to remove a lot of problems down the way. So make sure that before you start even reading articles or collecting journals, make sure that you read the question, reread it again, and make sure that you understand what they're asking for. And if you're not very sure, you can always ask your lecturer or colleagues what they understand, what the question is asking for. And so that means reading the question, break it down, try to analyze what they're really looking for. And once you get that done, then you can start by looking for research papers or articles or textbooks as well in this topic. Try to read as much as possible, because the more you read, then the better your understanding in that topic. Then it's easier for you to be able to be critical on another author's article. But if you don't have much knowledge, if you don't have in-depth knowledge of the subject, it's very difficult for you to criticize any work. So you need to read, you need to read, you need to read. Always remember, essay questions never ask you to just write everything you know on a topic. You need to be selective. So, and when you start writing, you need to always link back to the question so that you don't go off track. So always remember, when you're writing, once you get all your material that you need to write about, always refer back to the question so that you don't go off track. And always try to explain the information that you're presenting and how does it contribute to answering your question. So, and also when you get to the conclusion, make sure that it's very clear and it states what you've already written. Don't introduce new information in conclusion. Next slide, please, Neil. So we got different types of academic writing. It could either be descriptive writing or analytical and evaluative writing, which is critical and analytical in style. So although at master's level, they emphasize analytical writing a lot, and they tend to discourage descriptive writing, but the two go together. You cannot be analytical if you don't provide descriptive writing of what you're going to talk about. So usually if you decide to write on any topic, first of all, you need to describe the topic, describe the key facts, and then once you provide this description, which is like the background for your writing, then you can start being analytical. But if you just wrote descriptive work without being analytical, that's where you lose points. So the two go together, the two writing styles go together. Descriptive writing and analytical writing go hand in hand. So you always have to use the two. But the only thing that you need to remember is that try to minimize the amount of descriptive writing that you use. So for example, I can give hypothetical writing. If let's say you're writing as a paragraph, I would say probably use maybe 10% descriptive writing and then 90% analytical writing. Next slide, please, Neil. So what's descriptive writing? So descriptive writing really is form of writing which provides more details on what something is about. For example, topic, about a problem, about a situation, context, or a case study. It may recount where this took place, who was involved, and when it occurred. It offers a background to the discussion of an essay, which I just mentioned previously, and it tells the reader what the topic is about. This is very important because if you don't tell your reader what the topic is about, and you leave them guessing what you're going to talk about, this makes your essay difficult to follow. So description usually comes before critical analysis, and description is very common in everyday language. So academic writing uses an objective third-person style when describing. And always remember, a good essay usually requires more than just description to obtain a higher grade. Next slide, please, Neil. So, when writing, it's always advisable to have a critical frame of mind, and Wallace and Ray in their book emphasize that the authors, when they're writing their article or their research, mean to be honest, but they may have been misled by the evidence into saying something that you, who is writing the essay, may consider untrue. So in that case, then, if you feel that what they presented is not accurate, then you need to highlight this and then also provide evidence to back your thinking and why you think it's not accurate. And also, when authors write their articles, they mean to be logical, but they may have developed a line of reasoning that contains a flaw. So again, if you're able to spot this flaw, then by all means, bring it up in your discussion and also find a way to back it up with written evidence. And then also, authors may mean to be impartial when writing their article or when presenting research findings, but they may have incorporated into account some assumptions that you don't share with them. So again, you can bring this up in your critical analysis and also bring some evidence to back up your thinking. Then also the authors may mean to tell us something new, but may not have taken into account other information that you, as the essay writer, is aware of. So again, you can bring this up and back it up with evidence. Next slide, please, Neil. So in critical analysis or analytical writing, the reason why we really emphasize this is because as a student, if you write your article in an analytical way, it demonstrates that you have an understanding of the original argument, and also it shows that you're able to provide an interpretation of a different point of view from the existing argument. And this helps to evaluate the accuracy and acceptance and the truthfulness and the worthiness of the existing papers or research. It's also a necessary skill to have, which is good for general living. Next slide, please, Neil. So what's good critical analysis? Good analysis and evaluation is important because it helps you to earn a good grade for an essay. And this is achieved by taking information from the descriptive part of your essay. Try to analyze it. Analysis is really like breaking it down and trying to explain why those points are there, and also evaluate. So evaluating is trying to measure and see whether they really worth what you think they are. So as a writer, like I said, you start with description and then you go on to analyze and evaluate what you've written, and then try to support it with what other people have written. So how do we analyze and evaluate information? So first, we need to discuss why something happens or happened or is done the way it's been done. So we need to find out the reasons behind something or the theories informing of something. So that means that if you're going to talk about certain topic, you need to be able to convince the reader about the theories behind it and about the reasons why it's the way it is. Also, we need to talk about how something occurs. So you need to identify the relationship of parts and also try to show this to the reader. So, and also discuss possible alternatives. So let's say, for example, you've criticized an article that an author is written, and you say they've done X instead of Y. So, and once you do that, then you also need to look at an alternative to the X and Y, and you need to explain this to the reader. That shows that you have a deeper understanding of the topic you're talking about. Also, you need to evaluate why something is important or significant, and this helps the reader become convinced that you understand what you're talking about, and also why the opposite is successful, and also evaluate implications, solutions, recommendations, and where to go from next. So that will be highlighting things like recommendations. Next slide, please, Neil. So critical analysis can involve a discussion of the strengths and weaknesses of the subject you're talking about. Let's say, for example, we're talking about the city of London. So your description may be, London is a very old city. It was started by the Romans in 43 AD, and it's the capital of the UK. And then, so that's a description. So then for critical analysis, you need to highlight things like, why is London good? Why is London a good city? Why is it because of job opportunities? Is it because of good housing, good transport network? And then what are the cons or the weaknesses of London. Again, you need to highlight this. So having that mindset where you can highlight the strengths and the weaknesses of something is very important in critical writing, because it shows that you're not just thinking in one way. You're thinking on both strengths and weaknesses. You're able to identify this and you're able to present this to the reader. Also, you should be able to highlight the usefulness of an idea. So does the idea work in practice? So you need to relate theory to practice. And then also you need to look at the evidence. Again, I emphasize this. Evidence means you look at the other articles that have been written that support your way of thinking. So there are many databases that you can get written articles from, CNI, PubMed, you go Google Scholar as well, although most academics don't support this, but it's a good starting point. So, and also you need to identify how your idea links to other ideas in the field. Yeah. And then also be able to show how the idea compares with other ideas. So, so if you've looked at an article, you've managed to bring out an idea that they're discussing. So by you looking at that article and trying to compare it with other authors that have looked at the same idea and theories, you score more points by doing this. Then also make sure that the articles you use are the most recent ones. So ideally the last 5 years. So if you're writing your essay in 2021, probably it's better to look at articles between 2016 to 2021. But if, let's say, for example, you want to provide a definition of a term and you can't find an article which is recent, you can always provide this definition and say, done by Smith in 1970, and there's not much change that is occurred with this definition. Next slide, please, Neil. So, how do we evaluate critical writing? So, besides discussing strengths and weaknesses, the critical analysis should further evaluate the following. So, we need to look at the implications of the articles we've read. So, what are the possible changes that this new information can have on practice and in future practice, let's say in occupational health? And what are the possible solutions to the problems identified in your discussion? So, and what are the possible future alternatives? We need to explore this. And what are the general recommendations for the future? And then also you need to summarize your pros and cons in a topic that you've discussed. Next slide, please, Neil. So we have what we call Bloom's taxonomy, and what Bloom's taxonomy does is that it shows critical writing in an hierarchy, and the higher you go in the hierarchy, the more importance or the more marks you score in an academic writing. So if at the bottom there, if you can just remember and recollect information and just put them in paper without explaining your understanding or applying it to a situation or analyzing it or evaluating or trying to synthesize, like break down information and then bring it back together, then you won't score much marks by just remembering information. So this tool is really good when you're doing your writing, because it can remind you what's more important, so that you don't just remember information and not and not try to apply, not try to analyze, not try to evaluate, or not try to synthesize and create new information. So, so it shows the higher order of thinking skills that contribute and communicate conversation in a disciplined and a creative and original manner. Next slide, please, Neil. So it's still the same taxonomy, but it gives more details. So at the bottom there, you can see remember. So you just recall facts and basic concepts, and you don't add much to it. And then at the second level, you explain ideas or concepts. At the third level, you use information in a new situation, which is very good. And then the fourth level, analyzing, you try to draw connections among ideas. And then in evaluating, you're trying to justify a stand of a decision. And then in the creation level, you're trying to produce new or original work based on the other steps. Next slide, please, Neil. So in critical writing, you need to demonstrate your abilities of the higher order critical skills by creating your own theoretical framework, evaluating other scholars' work, and analyzing their evidence or logic. So descriptive writing demonstrates understanding of a subject, and it's your foundation before you go into applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating new way of thinking. Next slide, please, Neil. So how do you evaluate your resources or articles that you've used? Because this skill, by demonstrating to your reader that you've been able to evaluate the articles you've used, it shows that you've taken time and the articles you've used are really like from authors who are respected in that field. So first of all, you need to look at the credentials of the writers. So who wrote the article? What are their qualifications? Is the article peer-reviewed or not? Then also you need to look at the bias. Is there a conflict of interest? Normally, most authors declare this in the article, if there's a conflict of interest or not. And also the currency of the article. Is the article up to date? Is it like written within the past 5 years? And then also we need to do some formal evaluation. We got tools called CASP tools. I've put a website there that you can go to, and there are checklist questionnaires that you can use for different articles depending on the design and methodology of research. And they're really good. They can help you. Once you run your article through that tool, it can help you get more information to write on critiquing evaluating your article. Next slide, please, Neil. So, so how do we analyze articles? We analyze them by breaking them down and study the content. So we also carefully examine the information that they've provided to understand and explain and interpret them. We also try to recognize gaps, assumptions made, and connections between the evidence or data in the article so that we can draw our own conclusions or judgments. We also need to dig deeper beyond the surface of what's written and examine any assumptions or any reasoning behind the perspective. By using questions, we are able to scrutinize the articles we've read and the arguments being presented. Next slide, please, Neil. So take, for example, if we're asking and providing answers to the following, why did the author write this article in this text? Yeah. Is there any evidence of bias? For example, you look at their sample size. Was it big enough or was it too small? Look at the correlation coefficient. Is this study, if someone repeated the same study, do you think they can come up with the same outcome, or is it going to be something completely different? So that's how you assess your bias. Also, you need to find out, why did the author make certain assumptions and not others? And why was certain evidence presented? And how does the evidence given support the conclusion reached? Who will benefit from the article's proposal or argument? Any evidence of a conflict of interest? What information has been omitted from the article and why? How will you develop your own argument and convince others? So if you go with these questions in your mind and then you write the answers to these questions, already you're being critical, evaluative in your mind, and your article will be more interesting to the reader. Next slide, please, Neil. So, so citations and verbs. So, so when using citation verbs in critical discussions, this helps the reader understand your line of argument. So there are a number of citation verbs that can be used to introduce information into the main text. For example, you can say, Smith 2021 points out this, or argues this, or states this, or claims this. So the choice of citation verb, which I just mentioned, like argues, states, claims, suggests, indicates, it gives the reader your sort of perception about what these authors have written. So the, for example, if you say Smith 2021 argues that, it shows that it's, the article is quite complex, or the topic is quite complex, but this is just one of many arguments that is out there. If you say Smith claims that, it means that you're trying to question the validity of Smith's claims or point of view. If you say Smith emphasizes, then again, it shows that you realize how important this point is, and perhaps you take this line of thinking as well. So these verbs are important in bringing home our line of thinking. Next slide, please, Neil. So, so again, like I said before, descriptive writing and critical writing, both of them are important. It's only that you need to strike a balance between the two. Descriptive writing should take much more smaller percentage of your writing, and then analytical writing should take a big chunk of your writing. So descriptive writing, again, is necessary to offer background information about the subject, so that the writing and the critical analysis you're making makes sense to the reader. However, the descriptive writing should be kept to bare minimum. This is because you need to use more words for the analytical writing to score high marks. Next slide, please, Neil. Next slide, please, Neil. Okay, so I'm going to talk about paragraphs because this is very important when writing your essay, because now you know what's descriptive writing. You have an idea what critical analysis and evaluation is, but then how do you present your information? You present your information in paragraphs. So paragraphs are a collection of sentences. So How should you present your information in your paragraph? So paragraphs are the building blocks of your writing. So paragraphs in academic writing are generally more organized in a certain way than other types of writing. So each paragraph should be about one point or one aspect of your topic. Don't try to mix many points in one paragraph, because first it confuses the reader, and then second, you'll end up being descriptive in your writing and not analytical. So always try to have one point in a paragraph. So academic writing relies on well-developed paragraphs, so that there's room for critical discussion of each point. Next slide, please, Neil. So effective paragraph writing in academic writing. So it's important that your paragraph has focus, has logic, it's got cohesion, like it connects with the other paragraphs, and it's also relevant in your in the bigger picture of your essay. So a paragraph presents a complete unit of information, focuses on one central idea, explores that idea in a systematic way, and links different topics effectively, flows logically from the topic sentence to the final sentence, and links effectively to the previous and the following paragraphs. And it's relevant to the main essay or thesis topic, and drives your argument forward towards your conclusion. So this is the role of a paragraph. So you don't just write information, you got to be very specific. Next slide, please, Neil. So you'll ask me, what's the ideal length of a paragraph? There's no specific rule about this, but always remember that in academic writing, which is different from other forms of writing, an academic paragraph should introduce the topic, support this topic, and offer concluding thoughts about the topic or forward link. And in between there, your critical analysis and evaluation as well has to be included in that, supporting the topic or criticizing the topic. So one sentence paragraphs should be avoided, and generally academic paragraphs should be between 4 to 8 sentences. Off long, like very long paragraphs can become confusing. So make sure that your information is always precise and relates to the topic sentence. If not, try subdividing your paragraphs into separate paragraphs. Also, too short paragraphs may not demonstrate complete understanding of your thought. So always ask yourself, does this paragraph fully develop the main point? If not, then you need to add further information or integrate it into another paragraph. Next slide, please, Neil. So this is a rough guide of your paragraph structure. So you'll have your topic sentence, which introduces the main point, tells the reader what to expect in that paragraph, and links to the previous paragraph. And then the development of the paragraph. So description. So actually under development here, you can see that everything in there provides a complete paragraph. So you provide a description of the topic or subject you want to discuss, provide evidence, like evidence that support or is against, analyze, provide discussion, evaluate, challenge, and persuade the person. So all this should be inside a paragraph, and that's just one point. So if you follow that format there of development there, you'll never go wrong, because at the end of the day, your paragraph will have covered all the areas that you're required to write as a student at level 7. You've provided a description, you've provided evidence, you've analyzed the evidence, you've discussed, you've evaluated, you've challenged, and you've persuaded the reader. And then in concluding sentence, you need to wrap up the paragraph, show the significance of the main point, link back to the main point, and then link forward to the next paragraph. Next slide, please, Neil. So topic sentences, these should clearly state the main point of the paragraph. They should provide a tester of information to come. Excuse me. They should also link to the previous information. So try to avoid starting a citation. Put your main idea in your own words. Next slide, please, Neil. So again, paragraph writing. We spoke about developing a paragraph. So paragraph may have one specific function, which is, let's say, for example, you want to define a term or theory, or your paragraph may have different functions. However, it should follow an overall thread which runs from your opening statement to your conclusion. So always think about what you want to achieve in that paragraph, and you need to stay, focused. You need to add relevant information, evidence analysis, and you need to be able to be persuasive about your points so that you can drive your argument forward and use appropriate academic language. Next slide, please, Neil. So again, this summarizes what aspects of a paragraph you need to have. You need to define your point, describe, explain, add evidence, analyze, evaluate, challenge, persuade, compare, contrast, contradict, emphasize, support, summarize, exemplify, conclude. So ideally, you should cover all these points in one paragraph if you want to score good points. Next slide, please, Neil. So in your concluding sentences, this may summarize the points made, evaluate the points made, draw issues together, and indicate your view as a writer about the information presented, link back to the topic sentence, and link forward to the next point. Next slide, please, Neil. Okay, so when you're writing, there has to be a flow, which is cohesive, as we mentioned earlier. So you need to have effective links between each part of your paragraph, which shows logical connections between your ideas to allow your work to flow easily. So links can be made in different ways. For example, using transitional verbs or sentences, so that the reader is aware that in the next paragraph, you're going to talk about this point, yeah? And then when you start the next paragraph, then you refer to the previous paragraph. So cohesive words and phrases can be repetition of keywords, but try to use this sparingly, synonyms, pronouns, and try to refer back to something you already mentioned. And sentence structure as well. Next slide, please, Neil. So what should your layout of your paragraph be like? So make sure that you use the correct layout to indicate a new paragraph. So the block style, if you're using a block style, make sure that you leave a full line between paragraphs so that it's easy to follow. Or if you're using the indented style, do not leave a line. Instead, just indent your new paragraph, and the reader should be able to see that is a new paragraph. Next slide, please, Neil. So what are some of the transitional phrases that you can use? Some of the transitional phrases that you can use, which can indicate like you want to provide evidence which is contrary to the point or your line of reasoning. You can use the transitional phrases like, although this may be true, blah, 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 or in contrast, blah, 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 or different from. So such phrases can be very helpful. Phrases as well of your own that you know of. Next slide, please, Neil. So the University of Manchester has a phrase bank. So if you go to that link, they have lots of phrases, and I find them very useful when I'm doing my writing because they're free, and you can, once you go there, there are lots of them, and you can use them to enhance your writing style. Next slide, please, Neil. I've provided some more useful links there that you can also use for your academic writing. So if you go to those links, you can find them very helpful. Next slide, Neil, please. So my suggestions to you, if you're a student or writing at level 7, is some of the resources you have if you want to be good at writing is that, first of all, you have your university lecturers and tutors. You have also your library. Sometimes some universities, they have tutors in the library who can help with academic writing. And also, I would recommend that you use these support services to improve your writing skills. Critical writing skills take time to develop. The more you write, the more you become good at it. So the first time you start writing, you might not be very good, but with time, your skills keep improving. Next slide, please, Neil. So thank you. Thank you for listening.
Okay, right. Loks, that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. I think that very often we think of critical writing as being something that is a bit like rocket science, whereas in actual fact, if you follow the structures that you've suggested, it's not easy. You do have to learn how to do it. It does take some practicing in order to develop those skills. But every one of us probably does critical analysis anyway, every day, don't we? So for instance, you know, I don't know, have 2 or 3 things that, I don't know, say washing powder that you like, or something like that. And you'll say, right, okay, well, I like this one because it smells nice. But, you know, this one actually cleans slightly better. But on balance, if I use the third option, that might be better because I get the best of both worlds. And I think that we automatically go through that critical thinking for a variety of situations, and it isn't actually rocket science. It's actually really quite, yeah, we are already critically minded about things. So I think that's really useful. And I think that certainly with practice, then it's going to be an awful, you know, the skill will become easier, won't it? Right, so has anybody got any questions for Loks? Has anybody or want to make any observations or tell us, whether that is useful for your particular situations, if you're going to be students or anything like that. So let's start with any questions first of all. Right, T's asked a question about whether we recommend Grammarly. I love Grammarly personally, because obviously it does help with sentence structure, not necessarily paragraph structure, but certainly sentence structure, and with grammar and spelling. You do have to be careful. There are pitfalls with Grammarly. And make sure that you've set it to English UK rather than English American. It automatically defaults to English American, and a lot of students make that mistake. I've been marking this week, and one essay was actually very, very good, and scored highly, but she did get some points knocked off, as it were, because every spelling was Americanized, and even some of the words were spelt completely differently. So like organizing would be with a Z, and color was COLOR. Well, that certainly is going to be something that's going to distract from the reader in a formal UK English academic writing style. So it's not going to make a massive amount of difference, but it does detract from the overall flow. Right. So have we got any more questions? Moira said that hopefully her essays will improve next term. So what are you doing, Moira? Tell us what you're doing at the moment.
I'm doing my degree in occupational health at Robert Gordon in Aberdeen. Okay,
wonderful. So you're up with Linda Bruce then?
Yes.
Yeah, say hi to Linda from us.
I will do.
Okay, so you're doing postgraduate diploma, are you?
Yeah, postgrad.
Yeah, wonderful. And are you enjoying it?
Yeah. I found the academic writing quite difficult because of the length of paragraphs and things. Like you said, my first essay, that was the big comments that came back. The paragraphs were too short and I needed to lengthen them. So
yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think that Loks makes that really good point about linking sentences to help it flow, because you might be talking about, I don't know, say clinical governance or whatever, and then when you go on to the next paragraph, what I tend to do, this is the way I write, is I will write my paragraphs to get the information over without using the linking sentences first. Then I can decide which order I put the paragraphs in
to link
and
them,
then use a linking sentence in between so that it logically flows. So, you've concluded, and then you go on to your linking sentence to introduce the next topic that you're going to go on to into the next paragraph. And that's a really useful thing to be able to do, because, for instance, you might be talking about clinical governance. And one of the things in clinical governance would be risk management. So you could move on from in order to prevent disasters or whatever within clinical governance, Johnson 2020 suggested that risk management was an important part of the clinical governance structure. Then your next paragraph goes on to risk management. It flows beautifully, and it also introduces the topic that you're going to be going on to next. And it's almost like, you're peppering that last sentence with a taster of what's to come. And that really helps. That really helps with the flow. I must admit that since I've been a lecturer, I have to say that my writing has improved dramatically, because obviously you see so much critical evaluation, you see good writing style, you also see bad writing style and how not to write, and that also, you know, so really helps. But I think that, you know, within occupational health, there are some really good seminal texts, but not many of them written by nurses. So that tells me that, you know, occupational health nurses don't feel confident at doing critical writing. And I think that obviously with the new courses that are happening, you know, the length and breadth of the UK, that's only going to improve. And it also enhances your care going forward, because you can be more critical of the evidence that you find in order to base the care that you give, you know, on the evidence going forward. So yeah, hopefully that will help you, and you know, allow the flow of your essays to be more, you know, to be even better.
Yeah, thank you.
Neil, someone is asking whether they can get this slide.
Yeah, certainly what we'll do is I'll get the email list of everybody that registered, and if you're happy, Loks, I can share those slides.
Yes, I'm happy. Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, yeah, we can do that. Right, so Irene's asked, what is the best topic to write on as a dissertation for occupational health? My answer on this one, Irene, is what's your passion? If you've got it in your remit that you've already got a passion, something that, what do we say, floats your boat, something that makes your creative juices flow, you're halfway there. There isn't a perfect topic to choose per se. There is a perfect topic for you. So I would say choose something that you're really interested in, that you're already fairly knowledgeable about, but that you want to develop those ideas. And then if you've got a creative investment in that topic, you are much more likely to succeed. So something that you feel passionate about. For me, mine would probably be at this moment in time clinical supervision for occupational health nurses. Yours might be, I don't know, could be COVID risk management. It's whatever your topic is, whatever you want to write about, and share the knowledge that you find. Would you agree, Loks?
Yes, I do. And I think COVID is a new thing, and there are lots of things you can write about. So, for example, post-COVID syndrome. There are many people out there in the community, they don't know how to deal with the post-COVID symptoms. Yeah, they've come out of hospital, they still struggle with breathlessness. They don't know where resources are to cope. So you could write something about that, or something that you really enjoy. Because if you write about something you really enjoy, it's easier to get ideas and to make it more interesting.
Yeah, and your creative investment is going to be huge on that point. Okay.
Because, can I ask a question? This is Irene. Because COVID is very new, do we have research information that will be able to support my writing though?
It would be trickier, definitely, because there isn't as much evidence. I mean, we've got some evidence from papers that have been written and from research that has been done, but it's still early days. So you are not going to be able to provide probably as critical an argument as you would with something that was more widely written about, more widely researched. Okay. So there is always that. But then again, somebody's got to start somewhere, haven't they?
That's true.
Otherwise, there's never going to be anything in there. Mm-hmm. Yes, and like Lee says, you could apply research from previous pandemics or previous outbreaks of things and make comparisons.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Okay, so have we got any further questions? I'm just going back through the chat room. I don't think we have. One of the questions earlier on that Yasmin asked really was, what is acceptable number of reference articles for, say, 15,000 word dissertation? The answer that I gave directly to Yasmin was that it's usually 10 per 1,000 words. So if you've got 15,000 words, it would be 150 references that you need as a rough guide. It could be more, it could be less. If you have, say, for instance, let's say 150 references for a 15,000 word dissertation, that shows that you've got a pretty good level of understanding and that you've read widely. If there is a lot less than that, say you've only got 80, then you're not going to be giving the evidence from enough sources. However, if you go up to, say, I don't know, 250 references, then obviously you've got a lot of argument to get in there to actually make it make sense and to be able to give credence to it, because obviously, you know, it's going to be really difficult if there are too many citations in there. You need to get the balance right. So I would say for a 15,000 word dissertation, anywhere between 140 and 180 absolute max, because obviously you want to provide a coherent discussion and argument. So if there's no further questions, it's now just gone 8:30. I would like to offer my thanks to Loks yet again. You've done us proud, Loks. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
And I do have to say that Loks' academic writing was actually very good. So, you know, he's an authority on this. So thank you very much. And I am now going to stop recording.